Tom Silva, the legendary carpenter and contractor from this old house, has finally addressed the swirling rumors that have followed him for years. For decades, he quietly sat on truths that fans only whispered about. How does someone work in the public eye for over 40 years, build an entire reputation on craftsmanship, and still manage to keep some of the biggest behind-the-scenes stories completely under wraps? That question has lingered for a long time. Now, at 77, Tom has broken his silence, and what he has to say might just change the way you see him forever. Tom Silva's journey into the world of construction did not begin under studio lights or in front of cheering fans. It started in the quiet corners of Lexington, Massachusetts, long before anyone would ever call him America's most trusted home improvement expert. He was born into a family where building was not just a job, it was a way of life. His father, a skilled builder himself, did not send young Tom to any fancy school to learn the ropes. Instead, he handed him a tool belt and brought him along to job sites. Those who knew Tom back then say he never shied away from hard work. He watched. He listened. He learned, not just the how of construction but the why behind every cut and measurement. Why reinforce that beam? Why does this joint matter? Why spend time perfecting something no one will ever see? The answers, passed quietly from father to son, formed the blueprint for the craftsman Tom would eventually become. Those early lessons, built around doing things right the first time, became the heartbeat of his entire career. Growing up in Lexington, surrounded by colonial buildings and historic architecture that had stood for centuries, Tom developed a unique way of seeing the world around him. He did not just see houses. He saw stories hidden in every beam and brick. These were not simply structures. They were pieces of history, lovingly built and meant to last. While many in the construction world started with textbooks or trade school lectures, Tom's real education came from working side by side with experienced tradesmen who knew their craft inside and out. This was not about passing exams. It was about passing down a legacy. Eventually, Tom and his brother Richard channeled everything they had learned into something of their own. That is how Silva Brothers Construction was born, a family-run business rooted in old-school values but eager to take on new challenges. Whether it was a small renovation or a massive historical restoration, Tom approached every project with the same care he had learned as a boy. And the results spoke for themselves. Word spread quickly throughout Massachusetts. If you wanted it done right, you called the Silvas. That reputation for top-tier craftsmanship is what eventually caught the attention of the producers at this old house. The show was already beloved by viewers looking to learn about home repairs and restoration, but they needed someone who did not just know the work. They needed someone who truly lived it. Tom was a perfect fit. Back in the mid-1980s, when Tom was simply going about his usual business as a hard-working contractor, the last thing on his mind was television. He had a thriving construction business, a steady stream of jobs, and zero ambition to step in front of a camera. Then came a chance encounter with his neighbor, a television producer named Russell Morrish. When Morrish first floated the idea of Tom appearing on the show, Tom turned it down flat. He was simply too busy. He was running Silva Brothers Construction full-time and could not imagine juggling that with cameras, scripts, or TV audiences. But Morrish had already seen Tom's work up close. Silva Brothers had built the set for his PBS show The Victory Garden, and he believed Tom's craftsmanship deserved a bigger stage. So Morrish did not give up. The real turning point came when he showed up unexpectedly at one of Tom's job sites, with a camera crew in tow. Tom was setting up a room for another regular, Norm Abram, to shoot a kitchen segment. The next thing he knew, Morrish walked in, clipped a microphone onto him, and just like that, Tom Silva was on camera. No script. No rehearsal. Just him, his tools, and his knowledge. By 1986, Tom had officially joined the cast of this old house as the show's general contractor. 2 years later, Silva Brothers Construction became the program's official contracting firm, and Tom's presence on the show only grew stronger from there. Over the years, Tom tackled renovation projects that most people would not even dream of attempting. There was the 1887 Nantucket House, which started as a typical renovation but ended up becoming almost a complete rebuild. Then came the 1906 Arts and Crafts Church. Yes, a literal church, that the team converted into someone's home. One of the more jaw-dropping projects was a 1721 farmhouse that had tilted backward by 8 inches due to a rotted sill. Imagine trying to correct something like that without tearing the whole structure down. And then there was the Manchester by the Sea project, which Tom himself described as way too big for the time allotted. It was supposed to take 18 months. They pulled it off in just 10. Beyond the technical achievements, Tom became one of the show's most beloved educators. He had a gift for breaking down complex construction tasks into simple, understandable steps. Millions of viewers tuned in not just to see the transformations but to learn. He once admitted that if he had not become a contractor he probably would have been a teacher. And in many ways, that is exactly what he became through the show. Behind the warm smiles and smooth project walkthroughs, a quieter and far more complicated story was unfolding. Now nearing his late 70s, Tom has finally opened up about the behind-the-scenes struggles that nearly cost him his role more than once. Back in the late 1980s and into the early 1990s, Tom found himself constantly clashing with the show's producers. These were not small tiffs over camera angles. These were deep-rooted conflicts about the very soul of the program. Tom believed this old house should always put the craft first. Real materials, real tools, real problems, and real fixes. But when producers started squeezing construction timelines to keep up with filming demands, he felt it was like pretending the hard part of the work did not matter. Things got so tense that Tom eventually reached a breaking point. He gave the producers a clear choice: either allow him more control over how the construction was portrayed, or he would walk away. It was not a bluff. It was a man protecting his craft. Thankfully, the producers recognized just how valuable he was, not just for his skills but for the trust he had built with fans across the country. They adjusted the process, gave him more input, and the show held on to one of its most genuine assets. But that was not the end of it. In 2004, Tom was once again staring down a crossroads. The pressure had mounted again, and this time he went further. He actually began writing a resignation letter. He talked it over with his family, weighed his options, and seriously considered stepping away for good. The constant demand to make decisions that favored production flow over construction logic had worn him down. Producers caught wind of how serious he was and moved swiftly. They offered something even more valuable than money: autonomy. They guaranteed his work would not be tampered with for the sake of runtime, gave him more control on job sites, and promised to respect the technical standards he held dear. That resignation letter was never sent. But its existence alone spoke volumes about how close viewers came to losing the very person who gave this old house its authenticity. Then came the 2010s. Television itself was changing. Streaming platforms were booming, younger faces were trending, and snappier edits were becoming the new normal. Producers floated the idea of reducing Tom's screen time to make room for younger experts. But for Tom, this was not just about age or camera presence, it was about protecting the heart of the show. He pushed back firmly, reminding everyone that the audience did not tune in for flash. They tuned in for wisdom, for the kind of hands-on experience that only decades of real work could provide. The message was received. Tom Silva was not just part of this old house, he was its foundation. In 2018, a dark cloud settled over the tight-knit production crew. Austin Wilson, a young and bright-eyed crew member who had been personally mentored by Tom, passed away suddenly during a filming season. For Tom, this was not just a professional blow, it was deeply personal. People close to him described how profoundly the loss shook him. He pulled back from team conversations, grew quieter during set meetings, and began questioning the very path he had walked for decades. For perhaps the first time, those around him saw Tom seriously consider walking away, not because he no longer loved the work, but because something fundamental had shifted inside him. In the long, quiet months that followed, Tom found support in the most unexpected place: Austin's own family. They did not blame him. They encouraged him. They told him how much Austin had always looked up to him, not just as a builder but as a man. Slowly, Tom began to piece himself back together. Then came an announcement that brought quiet relief to everyone around him. In a closed-door internal production meeting in early 2025, Tom, now 77 years old, looked across the table at the familiar faces who had worked alongside him for years and confirmed what many had hoped but were not sure they would hear. He had no plans to retire. Not now. Not yet. He was staying on as lead contractor and technical consultant for upcoming seasons, with major projects already lined up in Westford and Ridgewood. There was a calm in his voice, the kind that only comes from someone who has been through real storms and found purpose on the other side. Tom's mentorship has become a cornerstone of how he pays things forward. In 2016, he began working closely with his nephew Charlie Silva, who is now the president of Silva Brothers Construction. Tom invested time, energy, and wisdom into ensuring Charlie was not just equipped but confident to lead. Charlie made his debut on the show through the Arlington Arts and Crafts House project and has since become a trusted face in his own right. But Tom's guidance extends well beyond family. He has been equally intentional about mentoring professionals across multiple trades, from finishing painters to landscape designers to electricians, always reminding them that craftsmanship is not a solo sport. It is a relay, and someone has to be willing to pass the baton. That belief led him to champion vocational education through Generation Next, an initiative launched in 2016 aimed at addressing America's critical shortage of skilled labor. Tom has sat on technical advisory boards, spoken at industry panels, and stood alongside advocates like Mike Rowe to raise awareness. Together, they have helped secure scholarships and donations, including a $25,000 contribution from Irwin to support the Home Builders Institute. Tom does not just want young people to dream. He wants them to build those dreams with their own two hands. At 77, with decades of work behind him and more projects lined up ahead, Tom Silva continues to show up, steady, purposeful, and as committed to the craft as ever. His story is not simply about renovations, nail guns, or wood shavings. It is about values. About hard work, patience, mentorship, and an unwavering belief in doing things right. He did not set out to become a television personality or a national icon. He just wanted to build things the right way, honor the lessons his father taught him, and share a little of that wisdom with anyone willing to listen. And in doing so, he built something far more lasting than any house. He built a legacy, one honest day's work at a time.